Okay, we're going to start with the exclusive right to sell residential brokerage in Maryland. And the good thing about Maryland class is it goes a little bit faster because everyone that's doing Maryland is usually pretty experienced in Virginia. So I won't have to be explaining the type of things that we do with, where's the listing, what property goes in this, and explaining contracts, and just going to be going mostly through the nuances between the MAR and then pointing out, in Northern Virginia, you will be doing X, but in here, you'll be doing Y. So exclusive right to sell, it's, the same type of information that you would have in the NVAR, the property listing, known as agreement, term, and sales, how long you're going to be on the market. What you'll see here is they don't have the same language that we have in NVAR, which is listing date, agreement date, and listing date. So they have agreement, term, and rights. The agreement shall be effective on and continue through. Cannot be longer than a year in duration. Okay. So that's pretty common. Listing price. I do like you to have a listing price, even if you're going to change it later. Showing instructions. I'm going to jump here real quick. Lockbox, there's actually an addendum here for lockbox. Remember, it's not in the listing like it is with NVAR. So here's the lockbox addendum separate from that. And again, I have to sign it. And if it's a tenant involved, the tenant has acknowledged that they've gotten a copy of it. So you want to make sure that the tenant gets a copy of the lockbox addendum. Okay. Marketing and internet advertising. So just so you understand right up front, it's a little bit different when we get to the commission part of MAR because they still have it connected to the brokerage. Virginia's decided to decouple that. And that starts with the internet advertising. So this is nothing new to you about what's going to happen with it. Their office exclusive is right up front. If you want to do office exclusive, you're checking this box. Other than that, the rest of it follows the same type of line and verbiage of the NVAR contract, a listing contract. Are you not submitting it? You are submitting it. Is it coming soon? And that's in bold down here. And remember, in the Maryland documents, there's a lot of this for buyers contracts where you have initials, and this gets missed inadvertently, I know, but sometimes we forget as agents, oh yeah, the seller has to click here that they actually want what they want. And the other one here is they acknowledge that they've read and understand the previous paragraph. You'll see that a lot in Maryland, okay? So just remember that. Does the seller want to signal they will consider offers requesting concessions and credits? Yes, no. Remember, I'm big on there is no box here for maybe. So yes, no on this type of stuff. Consent to discuss other properties. Now, this came up where they don't have it in here, but in Virginia, and I'm just going to take a point to talk about that, they'll say, because if you do have another offer and a buyer broker asks you if it's with your brokerage, the code of ethics says that you must tell them if it's with you or your brokerage. So if you're authorized to discuss other offers, okay? And then this just says, if we go under contract, I don't have to keep marketing the property, okay? This is just a grant release of, I can market your property online. Again, another one here under paragraph 10, I read this one. So just make sure that you're going through, again, on these acknowledgement sentences and getting the seller's initials. Fair housing. Did y'all know that? Seller responsibility for insurance. This just came up on a pre-occupancy. Who's responsible for the insurance? I feel like you can't overinsure on stuff like this, but the seller needs to keep that insurance going. If it's vacant, they need to call their provider and say, I'm out of the house, but I'm on the market. And it may be, and I've seen this happen, they have to find coverage from another provider for a vacant property. So make sure that your seller understands it's going to have to be insured all the way through closing. Even if they have a pre-occupancy or a post-occupancy, the seller should maintain that insurance until they're out of the property. Okay. All right, broker's compensation. So this is where it's a different flavor on compensation in Maryland than it is in Virginia. Number one, this says select one box. I'm consistently seeing all three of these boxes checked. Just check one. So is it a flat percent? Is it a percent plus another number? If you're charging a broker service fee like we have in Virginia, put that broker service fee here. And then the other is it's just a flat fee. Okay. And then these are the items that constitute you earning, and it's due and payable. Broker produces a ready, willing, and able to purchase the property at the listing price and or other such price. Seller shall, during the term, seller shall enter into a written agreement to sell, exchange, convey, or transfer the property to any person. In which event seller within 72 hours shall furnish broker a copy of written agreement. So this is in case they've got their own. Seller shall enter, so broker produces. It's two different parts. And so if the seller gets a buyer, the neighbor, a family member, or someone just walks up and they suddenly put an offer together and submit it, you'd like it to come through you, but if they've signed everything, they still owe you under this agreement. And then the time period, if the agreement expires or terminates, I've seen up to 90 days here. I usually put 30. That if you've gotten into an agreement afterwards, that you still owe me a commission. Okay. The difference in Maryland is this 72-hour period. Okay. And that is that the seller's bound to give us the agreement within 72 hours. Seller defaults or voluntarily agrees to terminate. So the compensation shall be deemed to have been earned by broker A, during the term or any extension thereof. I've got a ready, willing, able buyer, or the seller has defaulted or voluntarily agrees to terminate sale. So, or the seller breaches. So this is just lining up that you owe us a commission for everything we've done if the seller goes like sideways. It's kind of like an EMD type of a charge, not a charge, but hey, you got out of it, you defaulted, you owe me money. So not had too many of those paid out because most agents are like, it's not worth the energy, let's just move along. But they are bound that it's there to talk about if this happens. Seller breaches this agreement. It just says it'll be paid at settlement. However, seller acknowledges and agrees that settlement on the property shall not be a condition precedent to the seller's obligation to broker as herein provided. So this is one of those things where if it doesn't sell, you may still owe me. I gave you everything you asked me to do. It's been 120 days. I haven't gotten paid and you defaulted. You still owe me. Okay. You can make that argument. And I'm happy to move in with you on that if that ever happens. Okay. And then if we have to go to court, you'll also pay legal fees. This paragraph here is about the deposit made from a buyer, and it's pre-negotiating. So there's no question in a release of contract and EMD that I'm going to get a portion of that EMD. So most times what happens when an EMD is released, I'd say probably 90% of the time, 95% of the time, all that money goes to the seller. If the seller's getting it, let me put it that way. Most times the EMD is released to the buyer because the buyer is within the confines of the contract. If it's not, and the seller's receiving that deposit, this paragraph here lays it up front. Hey, look, you're going to pay me X. I don't know that I would go with a dollar amount here because we don't know what kind of commission or what kind of an EMD you're going to be getting. So if you get 10,000 and you've put 5,000 in here, you're getting 50% of it. But if you get 7,500, the seller's only getting 2,500 and you're getting 5,000. So I can see that would look like it's unbalanced. I would put here 50%, 35%, something like that. And all those things that they owe me commission, owe me compensation, there's no obligation if they've already listed with another brokerage. That's what this paragraph is about. Okay. Again, did you read all that? Sign it. Okay. Now here's the piece that everyone's wanting to know. What do we do here? Authority to cooperate with and compensate other brokers. Now, paragraph 15 is where in Maryland, they have continued to go down the path of brokers can charge a higher level of compensation and pay out of that to sub-agents and buyer agents like it traditionally has been. So they've maintained that. So you may be getting 25 bananas, and then you're offering out of those 25, 10 bananas to the sub-agent and 15 bananas to the buyer to pay the buyer broker. So it still couples that. If you aren't doing that, then you would not have any numbers in there. But that's what they have here. And we'll get into an addendum of listing brokers' offer of cooperative compensation in just a minute. Any questions on 15 at this juncture?
What do you mean, Anthony, that there is no numbers in there? There will be no numbers.
Well, again, Maryland has it in this paragraph that the buyer, that the broker is going to pay the buyer broker, the listing broker. And
it is kind of the same way we used to deal with it.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And
that's what I'm pointing out. Yeah. And so if they say, well, let's just see what comes in, well, you can't do that in Maryland. You can't wait. It's not in the contract is what I'm saying. So you're still going to have to charge 25 bananas and then offer out what you usually would to the sub-agent and understand what sub-agent. Can someone define to me what a sub-agent is?
Does it represent a sub-agent represent the seller, right?
The sub-agent still represents the seller under the license and listing of the listing agent, which this is kind of I don't understand how they're doing this, because the idea was that you can't show a property without a broker agreement.
Yeah, I have never seen a sub my entire career.
Yeah, so they're still keeping sub-agent going. And so I'm just not sure how that works. Okay. And I have not heard a good explanation of that. Most sub-agent numbers here that I've seen has always been 0. Okay. Because the idea was that the listing agent say, look, I'm not going to let you come underneath my listing to work for the seller when I don't know you. You're with Brand X Real Estate, and I don't know what you're telling them. So they just felt like it's not worthy of doing that. And then they would put here what the broker is offering out. So if you're charging 25 bananas and you're going to offer out a third of that or half of that to a buyer broker, then you could put that in here as, and I'll give a certain percentage of my bananas to a percentage or a dollar amount of the sales price to the buyer broker. The main takeaway from this is the commission still flows through the brokerage in Maryland. But there's an addendum where the buyer agent can ask for more from the buyer broker and the seller. So let me flip over to that one real quick because they're coupled here. And it's this form here. Listing brokers offer a cooperative compensation. You don't upload this to the MLS. Sellers, listing broker, property. This agreement serves as confirmation of the cooperative compensation offered by listing broker, okay, in relation to the sale of the property noted above. The listing broker shall pay the cooperative compensation to a buyer, broker, or subagent who completes performance. So I'm taking these numbers and I'm popping them into this form. Okay.
So Anthony, on the actual form,
yeah,
we will leave number 15 blank and we'll use this form. Is that accurate?
I misspoke. I misspoke. Don't leave 15 blank. Put in here what the seller wants.
But
But
the seller wants
then
2.5 bananas, then we will put that over here in number 15 to buyer broker compensation 2.5 bananas, and then we would also put it on the addendum as well, correct?
right, and this is a listing addendum here. This is like the property, we'll get this out. This form here operates like the DPOR disclosure form in that the seller's filling it out with the listing agent and then signing all of this. And then this is blank. This is in your folder so that when you finally get a ratified contract, the buyer broker and the buyers are signing off on what the seller said they would do ahead of time. So we put it in the listing. We put it in the listing.
This is to be sent to the buyer's request.
Right. Once you're getting ratified or they're in the middle of a contract, you're negotiating, you would send this form to the buyer agent. So when the buyer agent calls and says, how many bananas you paying on this? And you say, hey, I'm offering out 10 bananas. Okay, they want to see it confirmed. Remember how we're just kind of riding out in Northern Virginia, in all of Virginia, text, emails, that type of thing. I think Maryland's done a good thing here. They said, that's fine, put it in writing. So the buyer broker knows what their compensation will be, and it's not in the contract yet. It's not in the contract yet. There's another form that does come with the contract. Okay. So let's confirm you understand 15. Everybody get 15? Paragraph 15 of the contract? Anybody
Yes.
need further? All right, great. Then with this listing agreement, you are filling out with your seller, okay, what is it? So you see the difference between Virginia and Maryland. Virginia is putting it in the contract and saying, I've got this listing agreement, but the listing agreement is what you're having in the listing agreement for the compensation is nailed down in the contract. That's Virginia. Hold on a second. Had a little chatter in the hallway. And then in Virginia, it's whatever the buyer agent is putting out there. So we calculate that knowing that we have a ceiling maybe. It just depends on what the seller wants to do. So in Maryland, you got to switch hats. Or we'll probably not hats, but switch glasses, okay? Maryland's going to be a little different when you're talking contracts. Okay. But this, you fill out the agreement, paragraph 15, you confirm it with this addendum, and they don't have numbers in Maryland, they just have the titles. Listing brokers offer of cooperative compensation. Oh, you're going to do that? Okay, Mr. and Ms. Broker, let's put down what you're going to put, what you're willing to offer. The listing broker shall pay. So the weakness of this, the weakness and strength. The weakness of this is that the seller has already agreed up front what they're going to pay. They know what it is, it's transparent, but they're putting it down. I'm going to pay 25 bananas to the buyer, to the listing agent, and of the 25 bananas, I'm going to give 10 bananas to the buyer brokerage. Now, still on this topic, and I want to deal with it now because I don't want to lose the train of thought, okay? Because it's part of the contract. It's the buyer request for seller's compensation of buyer's broker addendum. I've switched from listing to contract, okay? And once we get done with listing, I'll stop and we'll come back into it. But this is the one that the buyer that you would use in the contract. I've still got confirmation in the form that the seller has already signed, like a DPOR form, a property disclosure form. You've signed it, now you sign it. But if the buyer wants more compensation for the agent, then this form is used. If they're fine with this, if they're fine with the offer of cooperative compensation and everyone is signed off on it, then this form may not be necessary. And I say may not because Maryland may change their mind. Now, what I've seen as a mistake coming in is that buyer agents on both our listings and our sales, and we've had to correct it, is the buyer and their agent will put the same amount in here thinking that so let's say the seller says, I'm going to pay you 10 bananas. Okay. Over here on paragraph 15, I've nailed it down here. I'll pay 10 bananas if you're a buyer agent. And then the contract comes in and they put 10 bananas and 10 bananas. And I think it's because the agent is operating on a Virginia mindset. The only reason you would put in an additional is because you're looking for more compensation to be paid by the seller for your broker, for your buyer. And it's not enough with what they have here. Keep losing it. Say that the buyer broker has 5 bananas and you're charging 10 bananas. So on this form, the compensation form of the contract, you would put the 10 bananas, the 5 bananas. And in addition to the broker to broker compensation, the seller hereby agrees to pay buyer's broker the amount of 5 more bananas, total 10 bananas. Okay. And then you are adding it up on paragraph 4. It's a little more involved. If the compensation that's being offered here is not enough and the buyer wants more, the in the contract, they fill that out. What I'm seeing is agents are filling out the other form, and this is also brand X. It's usually where it's coming from. I think we've done a good job in explaining, look, if it's 10 bananas and you're getting 10 bananas on this initial form, then you don't need to be getting more bananas from the seller. But they think they're confirming, oh, the broker's giving me 10 bananas, and let's confirm it's 10 bananas. Now they're getting 20 bananas on this contract form that they're using. They're putting 10 bananas, 10 bananas. Down here, it's saying 20 bananas. And agents, they're not reading this, and they'll say 10 bananas, 10 bananas, 10 bananas. That's not what is happening with this form. Any questions?
So Anthony, this form is only used if you want additional bananas, pretty much.
Yes.
Right?
If you're not having a banana and peanut butter sandwich, but you're having a banana pudding and you need more, then you ask for more bananas. This is crazy, but I'm going to post this on YouTube, so we got to be careful. Okay. I'll go over our company and what we would do individually as a brokerage when I'm not recording. Okay. All right. So back to the contract in general, ministerial acts. This is just letting them know I may do things for a buyer that's unrepresented that are not representing them. I'm just doing ministerial acts. Deposit held by escrow agent. Sellers advise that an escrow agent other than a Maryland licensed real estate broker is not subject to the same legal requirements.
Ecobogenic. WhatsApp video.
What's that? Okay. Smoke alarm notice. Regarding smoke alarms and smoke section,
ha
the type of
gustado?
smoke alarm required in his dwelling. Somebody needs
Les ha
to,
encantado.
yeah. Somebody needs to mute, please. Okay. And so it's just saying that the smoke detectors in Maryland cannot be over 10 years old. And they got to be, and this is when you're showing properties. If it looks nice, white and bright, just like the ceiling, they may have just painted over something. But they are required by law to have something that's less than 10 years old. So today, that could not have been installed prior to 2014. And then here's a link to that law. Seller acknowledges they've read it and understand. Lead-based paint, I think you understand that. Renovation, repair, painting of property. We're still in the listing agreement. It's just saying if you've had lead-based paint work on it, this is the letting the seller know what they have to do. That anyone doing to renovate, repair, or paint the property must be certified by the EPA where such work will disturb more than 6 square feet of paint per room for interior projects. Okay. Notice regarding disclosure of deferred water and sewer assessments. In Maryland, a lot of communities are built and then the development has a monthly or an annual fee that the owners have to pay for a certain amount of years. And so you want to be looking for that. Sometimes you're in a community where that's all been paid off, the bill's not there anymore. And other places, it's still in there. Let me see if I can find one real quick. Does everyone understand what I'm talking about? Okay. Someone's got a document page here. Nope, not that one. So this is a disclosure form for this particular property, Skyline Drive, Suitland, Maryland. And still loading. Wow, they got a lot in there. Here we go. So this would be under the disclosure form. And I'm looking for sewer. Okay, it's not searching it. Here it is. Paragraph 12 of the PG disclosure. It's also in the MER disclosure. But paragraph 12 is talking about, do you have deferred water? And the owner will know because they're getting a bill. There are no currently deferred. See, this one's not filled out completely. Okay, they're connected to public water, the sewer's connected, and they just decided not to fill this out. But it would have this box checked, or these boxes checked. Currently, front foot benefit charter are paid, or maybe if it's part of the tax bill, or this box is really what you're looking for. Deferred water and sewer assessments are assessed against the property in the amount of, and there's a check. I've seen amounts of 300, 500 per year, and they're still paying that. And until that overall loan is paid off, there's deferred water and sewer assessments on that property. So the owner will know because the owners should be paying it. Okay. So that's what this listing piece is about. Do you have that? Are you paying it?
Usually the settlement company look into these things when you submit an offer and they make sure that there are no liens or like deferred.
I don't know that the settlement company looks for that. They are looking for clouds on the title. They're not looking for HOA dues and stuff like that. And this is kind of like an HOA fee. It's a fee that's put together by the community when it was built. So prior to settlement, buyers entitled to rescind in writing the sales contract without penalty and liability. On rescission, buyer is also entitled to the full return of any deposits made if they find out that they haven't disclosed this and it exists. Okay. So if a seller subject to this law fails to comply, the buyer can get out. It's one of those other disclosures that you didn't disclose. And I found out there's this bill of $500 a year. I'm out of here. So it's not something the seller should be shy about. The seller should fill this out. On the contract, where'd we go? Right, they should fill it out here. I'm sorry, they should have it here and filled out here on the disclosure form. And then this is uploaded in the MLS so that the agent knows when they're showing the property, hey, you're buying this house, there's $100 HOA fee, plus there's this $500 fee for deferred water and sewer assessment. That's how Maryland counties have decided to work it. Okay. All right, that's paragraph 12. Offers, authority to disclose existing offers. Sellers advise that prospective buyers or cooperating brokers may inquire. The disclosure of existing written offers could be either beneficial or detrimental to seller. On the one hand, such disclosure could result in the interested buyer making the highest and best offer as promptly as possible. On the other hand, such disclosure could result in the interested buyer electing not to make an offer. This is so true. Has anyone had it happen where when you told them there was another offer, they backed away? Ashley? Is that a confirmation or a question?
No, that's a confirmation.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, some people don't want
I have
to.
to be very careful when I let other agents know that there is another offer or other offers, because I've had quite a few agents just not bother even writing.
Right. And this kind of gets in the whole discussion, doesn't it? About, do you have a deadline? How many offers do you have in hand? We've gotten so used to just saying, hey, nothing in hand, but my deadline's Monday. And then Monday comes and nothing happens. It's like, okay, why to have a deadline? Sometimes, and there's no rule or code of ethics or anything about setting a deadline. You could move forward without a deadline, and then you get two offers in and say, okay, I want a deadline. Then we say, hey, I have two in hand, the deadline's Monday. And what Ashley is saying, very good point. I got two in hand. Now we set a deadline. One of them pulls. I don't want to compete with 15 offers. So as the market heated up again, we're seeing more multiples because the interest rates came below 6%. It could be in their best interest to try to draw as many offers as possible. The other piece is that it could be detrimental because someone could pull because they don't want to compete. I remember I've been in multiples myself. I had one where we were on our 8th offer in 8 months. And so my people, they went from 500 to 525, waived the home inspection, and we put the offer in on Friday. And I think it was like 8 o'clock or something. And I told the listing agent, I said, look, because we don't have a deadline for the offer in our contract anymore. We used to have that. And I just told him, I'm pulling it 8 p.m. on Saturday. And he goes, wow, but we want to get to that. I said, I appreciate that. I said, but this is the best they can do. And what we're tired of being is the rung on the ladder to get to 530. So see, if I'm at 525 and someone else is escalating to 535 in $3,000 increments, the only way they can get to 535 if they're at like 520 is if I sit there as a rung on the ladder for them to get there. And that's where, do I disclose I have offers or not? If I'm not allowed to disclose, then some buyer agents and buyers, well, let's come back to it. Let's keep shopping. And then they lose out and they could have been the higher offer. So you're kind of you got to read the market. How's it going? Is it hot? Is there multiples? Are the buyer agents and their buyers that are coming in, are they serious? Are they willing to disclose? What I wouldn't do is dissuade anyone from writing an offer. Would they take less than 500? I don't know. Let's get on the dance floor. Don't say, nah, they're really wanting to go higher than that. I need the 475 to be able to tell people I do have one in hand. Okay. And it's, you just got to read the market as the agent and know, can I put that out? If you've been on the market over a week, 10 days now, and this is your first offer, I wouldn't be trying to act like you've got multiple offers and all that. Get that one going. Well, do we have any more? You call around to the ones that have shown it. Are you considering it? I do have one in hand. We'd like to get this wrapped up. Are you writing? But it's a balancing act. So that's why I think Maryland has pointed this out. It could result in interested buyers electing not to. It could disclose. It could make some of them get off the stick and do it. So that's the authority to disclose. I authorize. I don't authorize. Okay. If disclosure is authorized, broker or broker's agent shall also disclose, if asked, whether an offer was obtained by the listing agent. Now, I'm seeing some agents, and I'm having a talk with them, crossing this line out. This line is an acknowledgement to the seller, not is it okay? This is drawn completely out of the Code of Ethics Standard of Practices of NAR. So you don't want to be known for crossing out the Code of Ethics out of your listing agreements. Broker shall present to seller in a timely manner all written offers and counter offers, even if the property is subject to an existing contract of sale. So even if it's under contract and you guys write an offer, the broker's supposed to go in there and say, hey, I know we're under contract, but here's another offer. I got to present it to you. So do not dissuade your buyer from writing on something that's under contract. By the time you get to pending, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to win over the buyer, the seller. Okay. But just want to point that out. Is there a home warranty? Notice of property condition, disclosed disclaimer. And this is another one of those things where if I don't get the disclosure disclaimer, the buyer can pull. A buyer who does not receive the disclosure disclaimer statement on or before the execution of the offer by the buyer has the unconditional right upon written notice to the seller or seller's agent to rescind the contract of sale at any time before the receipt of the disclosure disclaimer statement. This is almost like an HOA document for everybody. Whether you're in an HOA or not, if you don't have the disclosure disclaimer form in there, then they can pull. The same thing is what they can do with Virginia.
Hey, Anthony.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of Maryland listings where the disclosure disclaimer statement is completely blank and then just signed at the bottom by the seller. Is that legit?
Right. Yes, it is. Because and honestly, the history on that is that's exactly what we had in Virginia. And Virginia decided to go with buyer beware approach and say, here's our disclaimer. Really, it's not it's a disclaimer, it's not a disclosure. This one you can either disclose or disclaim on that form. Let's pull one of those up here again. Here we go. This is just, all right, these guys are disclaiming because it's all blank through the disclosure section and they have signed the disclaimer. So they have disclaimed. A disclosure would have all these boxes done, and this is a good point here as well. In your listing documents, you need to have this in there. I do get these, and some of you are noticing, not just with Maryland, but I'm sending back this templated form that shows, hey, this is missing. And some agent said, hey, I have that. I just didn't think you needed to see it when you were signing in DocuSign. I want to see it to save everybody time on the command side. So go ahead and flow it into with your documents that are coming to me for signature so I can see the package is complete. And then I'm not coming back to you about where's this form. But yeah, that's a good point.
I think that's an adjustment that everybody has to make, because when Shannon was doing it, she only wanted the form she had to sign, and that was it. She didn't want to read anything else.
Ah, okay. Didn't know that.
Yeah. She didn't even want you to put a note in the note section.
Oh, really?
Just send it. That's all she wanted.
More information. Okay, guys. Now I'm getting it. 2 years later, I'm finally getting all that information. Okay. Yeah, I want to see it because it saves time on the back end. And most everyone's great on this, but sometimes I'll get in command, something's missing, and I'm sorry. Y'all probably submitted it 3 weeks earlier, and I'm just now getting to it. And so, oh, okay, this is missing. So I'd like to see, is it there? And now, especially with all the changes we've had, I want to make sure it's being done appropriately. But that's the difference between the disclosure and the disclaimer. It's the same form, but they choose which one they want to do. For the seller, I think it's better if you disclaim. In Maryland, in DC, there is no disclaimer. Okay. Now, again, on this, if they don't receive it, the buyer can get out. All right, so they can also get out because of the disclosure that is given to them 5 days after following receipt of it. So if they've written the contract and the disclosure disclaimer form is included in the documents, they've received it. So they got, within 5 days, they got a time to get out of that. This is really talking more about, oh, I didn't have it in my documents and now I've got it. And it's not in your seller's best interest to be delivering that late. And it does terminate if before making a written application to a lender for a loan, if the lender discloses in writing at or before the time at the right to rescind terminates upon submission of the application. So if they've put an application in, it knocks it out. Or within 5 days following receipt of a written disclosure from a lender who has received the buyer's application, if the lender's disclosure states that the buyer's right to rescind terminates at the end of the 5-day period. So Maryland has some rescission periods in here, but they're all connected early on in the process. Okay.
Anthony, does the 5 days apply to the disclaimer?
Yes. This is about if they haven't received it. Okay. And then if they do get it, they got 5 days to be in or out. That's why you want it in the listing. And so when that agent is submitting the offer and they have these things signed, that's all, it's started. So at the time they're doing the home inspection, at the time they're doing whatever else, they've got 5 days to rescind, except, however, a buyer's right to rescind terminates if not exercised, A, before making written application to a lender for a loan, if the loan lender discloses in writing at or before the time application is made that the right to rescind terminates upon submission of the application. They submit an application, your right to terminate ends, to not terminate, but to rescind ends. Okay. Or another time they can't do it is after following receipt of a written disclosure from a lender who has received the buyer's application for a mortgage loan, if the lender's disclosure states that the buyer's right to rescind terminates. All right. Foreclosures, court-appointed sales, there are no disclosure forms. So they can't get out when it's a disclose, when it's not directly from the seller. It's a foreclosure, a court-appointed, which could be a divorce, a trustee, a death in the family. They can't get out because of that, because there is no disclosure disclaimer required in some of those instances. Okay, and this is just a different paragraph than what we have within VAR. It's that if you have some violations, they must be cleared up. Permit violations. Conservation easements, a lot more of this in Maryland than we have in Virginia. And the owner, again, you're relying on the owner to tell you, are you connected to a conservation easement? And all these different forms that are possibly required. Flood notice. Do you guys know where the flood maps are? Do you need some guidance on that, where they are in the MLS?
Where are they in the MLS?
Yes,
Great.
where are they?
So, yeah, so this is a listing. And when you go to print, use the Agent 360. It's got maps. Click down here on the bottom. And right here is the flood map. Okay. This one's orange. So it's out of special flood hazard area. Okay.
Okay.
It's this painted one here.
Oh, wow.
Show you one that might be closer to some water. Here you go. Let's go to this one. Trying to get you one that might have some different colors. That one was like completely out of it. Well, this one's out of it too. Okay, well, out of special flood. I was surprised because it's got this creek here, but this would be different colors. I had one that I closed last month where the back corner of the house was inside the floodplain. And the buyer wanted to stay in, so we did. But they got to disclose that they're in that. Okay. And it's not just the house. This one had the house corner, it was the whole lot. And you go by, and these maps that are here are county, and they're the flood maps. And folks say, well, what's the latest FEMA map? Well, the FEMA map bases it on these county maps. And I think we saw a notice the other day that Fairfax County is about to redo theirs. So those get updated every several years. All right. This is a pretty big thing. Maryland non-resident seller. You know the FIRPTA, right? FIRPTA is for Federal Investor Realty Property Tax Act or something like that. This is like a state level FIRPTA. Are you a non-resident seller? If they live in Virginia or DC and they're selling their house over there, they are a non-resident seller. But if the owner lives outside of Maryland, but they own it in an entity that's in Maryland, they're not a Maryland non-resident seller. So they could have an LLC in Maryland that owns it. Okay, so they're not covered by this. But what happens here, and you don't want to be taken by surprise, they acknowledge that they're going to have a tax. Okay, 8% of the total payment to a non-resident seller. Now, that will not be pulled if they've paid their taxes to the county first. And so 3 weeks before closing, a non-resident owner needs to go to the county and get passage on this. Okay, I am selling my property, I'm filing with you, and you give clearance that I don't owe anything. Military owners, you want to make sure in Maryland that they're a military owner. They may own in Maryland, but their residents may be Florida, Texas, Alaska, because those are low tax states. And if they're a resident, I just had this happen in one of my Maryland listings, and he says, oh no, my residency is Florida. It's like, so they want this money. So he had to go to the Maryland State Department of Assessment and Taxation. There's a website there to file that I don't owe you any taxes. What Maryland's doing is they're trying to get the taxes out of the people before they leave. And then they would have, if they haven't done that due diligence to file with the Maryland State Department of Assessment and Taxation, Maryland will take this money and then they got to file to get it back. Okay. Everyone understand that? A lot of information in paragraph 28 about this. And then there's the FIRPTA paragraph. So I do find that this takes out-of-state owners by surprise. They don't know this. It's disclosed to them when they buy, and then it's disclosed to them when they sell, and they've been living there, having taxes taken out of their paychecks to Maryland and Montgomery County and wherever for years, and then suddenly they get hit with this 8% withholding. Properties with private or domestic water supply, this is what we would call this well and septic. Okay, so when you go in looking for these types of forms on well and septic, it's not going to say well, it will say well, but it's going to say private water supply, private sewer. Okay, and then they're disclosing whether they have a well, septic, or on public. Are they in the middle of a Superfund site? Hopefully not. This would be a place where there's toxic materials that's under the land. Okay. I think these other items you understand. The addenda. I do get this where you don't have things checked off here. And that makes me suspicious. This is why I'm asking, where's all the forms? Because I'll have some and there's no lockbox form. Okay. It's an old house. There's no protect your family from lead in your home form. There's no solar panel form, and we get panicky later that someone's buying it saying, where's your solar panel form? That's why I want to see these things. Okay. So that's the contract. Any questions on the contract? This is an addendum. It's the financial condition of the property. It's an addendum, and we usually have this in our contract in NVAR. They have an addendum for it. Lockbox addendum.
So Anthony, if you want to ask for additional compensation, where do you put that?
You as the buyer agent?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that in the contract. I was going back and forth because it was in the listing agreement and then it comes up again in the contract. We'll do the contract in a few minutes to show the difference, okay? So we'll get more on that. Anything else here that we might need to take a look at? Okay. So we have the clauses and contingency form in Virginia. And what they have in Maryland, of course, is an addendum. So you have a whole addendum here if the buyer needs to sell. I'm sorry, that's contracts. Let me stick with listings. We'll come to that in a second. Well, the short sale addendum, not happening a lot right now, but if it does, you have to have a short sale addendum with your property. And then the solar panel. Now let's talk about this for a second. This can tank a deal as well. Okay. The solar addendum, date, seller, broker, property known as. Okay. So the seller needs all this information. So when you're in the midst of a purchasing of a property and all of this is handed to them at closing, you want to make sure they put this in a safe place. Okay. As long as those solar panels are on that house, this information needs to be shared with the potential buyer. Who's the manufacturer? All their information. The seller owns or does not own the solar system. They own, that's great. Because if they don't, then paragraph 3 comes into play. Lessor, lien holder, the term lessor as used here and shall refer to the company, who they're getting it from. In the event seller does not own the solar system, seller acknowledges that solar system is subject to a lease or power purchase agreement or unpaid loan. And all this goes here. This information must go to the lender. Okay, it's not just that they've given it to you and you deal with it. It needs to go to the lender. The lender needs to know, well, what's that payment? I mean, it could be $300-400 a month. Okay. And sometimes maybe there's no loan on it, but there's a maintenance fee, and the company may have a transfer fee. I've seen this upwards to over $1,000, and it nearly tanked a deal. Sometimes what sellers will do is they will take proceeds and pay this off. Now, the tug of war on that is, well, that buyer's getting all this stuff and I'm still paying for it. Why aren't they paying for it since they're going to be buying it? And now they're benefiting it for the next several years. And the reason is it's becoming too expensive. The buyer can qualify for the $500,000 purchase, the down payment, the closing cost, and all those fees. And then suddenly there's this $2,000 or $2,500 fee, and there's this monthly payment of $200 a month. And now it's outside their reach. So sometimes you'll have to negotiate that the seller will just pay this off. Okay. And This one, I don't see why you wouldn't put this up in the disclosure documents. Okay. So that the buyer knows up front, oh, this is what it's going to cost me. Solar system documents, copies of any documentation pertaining to the solar system. Do you have any? Shall be provided to buyer. Solar system warranty transfer. Now, this is for the listing. Okay. There's a whole nother addendum for the contract. So just keep that in mind. And I'm signing this to put that in here. Okay. Any questions on the solar panel addendum? Okay. Any does anyone have any down here? Any more questions on the paragraph 15 of the listing agreement, which is the compensation and that addendum? Anybody got questions on that again? I want to make sure that's nailed down. You've got it?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. All right. Tell you what, let's take a 5-minute break and we'll come back and get on the contract. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. See you in about 5 minutes.